Aloha everyone, and welcome to the Center for Learning and Teaching's teaching tip for today. What I would like to discuss is something called transactional distance. It's an educational theory presented by Michael Moore back in the early 90s. And it's really helpful for me as I try to think about ways to connect better with my students. And Michael Moore, he defined transactional distance as this inherent separation that happens in distance education that can result in kind of psychological communicative gaps. In short, it's the reason why students often feel lonely or alone in their classes as they do online courses, but also why teachers feel like they don't have this connection with their students. And Moore provided a kind of three things to consider as you plan ways to overcome this inherent problem, transactional distance. So the things he presented is structure. So it's important to consider the way you design the course, which is pretty obvious, but I'll talk a little bit more about why he said that in a second. Dialogue. This is the interaction between you and your students, but he defined dialogue a little bit differently. He defined it as interactions that you have with your students that are positive in nature and that help the students learn. So it's not just any communication, but it's the ones that are positive and help the students to learn. So we define that as dialogue. And then he also talked about the importance of learner autonomy, that students have some kind of agency in the learning process. Okay, so I would like to present kind of two ideas that are helpful for me as I design online courses to help with that, take into consideration those three things and really help close transactional distance. Okay, so the first one is because course structure and learner autonomy are closely related, Moore kind of theorized that the more structure you have in the course, the more you program an online course, the more students will feel constrained by that course, and it will actually increase the transactional distance because the student will feel more and more that they're just interacting with the computer instead of interacting with people. And so they feel more and more isolated, alone in their learning. So it's important to plan your courses to provide for autonomy. And I'll talk more about that in a second. But also to provide high amounts of dialogue. So for the first one, if for each credit that you're teaching students, in a normal semester, that would mean about 3 hours of work that the student is responsible for per credit. So in a 3-credit course, you would expect them to do 9 hours of work per week. Well, in the spring semester, this is a shortened semester, this works out to be about 4.5 hours. So you think about, okay, I can demand of my students about 4.5 hours of work. The problem in online education is that we often just pack in and program all that work for the students. And so they have no autonomy in that learning. So as you design learning activities for your students, try to design activities that take up that 4.5 hours per credit. You can expect that from your students, but to give them time to exercise some agency in that process as they analyze or as they memorize. The students are doing some of that themselves. So for me in my class, I teach a church history class this semester, and so for my students, I'm having them look up some things from the Joseph Smith papers that were my students have to read the Saints book. That's their reading material, Saints Volume 1. And so I'm having them do some search in the Joseph Smith papers on things that they found interesting in Saints. So, I'm accomplishing the learning objective, but at the same time, I'm giving them some autonomy on things they can choose in that learning experience. Okay, so don't program all 4.5 hours. Give the students some autonomy in that experience. Okay, the next piece of guidance I would give is reach out often to the students. Take every opportunity you can to dialogue with your students. We have some great counsel given by Nancy Terafiti, and one of the prior videos, she uses Facebook Messenger, which I'm actually trying this semester because I thought that was such a great idea. in a way to connect with my students. But you can do this through Canvas announcements. You can do this through the messages in Canvas. You can do it through discussion boards in Canvas. But take every opportunity you can. For our online teachers, we actually encourage them to give feedback on pretty much every single submission that the student puts in. Now, that may not be realistic for you, but take every opportunity you can to interact with the students, to dialogue with them, to give them feedback, and they'll feel more connected with you as a teacher. Thank you for your time. I hope this was helpful, and we'll see you soon.